Response. Dr. Rajim Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the opportunity to make take a call on immigration. And I ask the question, Mr. Chairman, is our immigration system working well? And I ask the question whether this system was working well in the case of Sunil Kumar. Sunil Kumar was a young man from Fiji who came here was here on a work permit and was diagnosed having end-stage renal failure and was given dialysis and was waiting a kidney transplant. And he was forced to leave and go to Fiji, and he died within a very short time of returning. The Minister, Mr. Chairman, has conveniently refused to answer questions in this House on this particular case. And what she has been citing, Mr. Chairman, is that she did not have a privacy waiver, and therefore she could not possibly talk about this case at all. Now, but she knows very well that privacy waiver does not apply to a deceased natural person. That's excluded in the Privacy Act. In any case, if the Associate Minister and the immigration system in New Zealand, Mr. Chairman, had done their work diligently, they would have reached a different decision given the facts. And any Labour Minister of Immigration would have reached a compassionate decision on this particular case, and this young man would have been alive today, but he's not. So why is the system under this particular minister so working in such a flawed way? Let's look at the facts. The facts are that this young man, as I said, was working here, had end-stage kidney failure, started receiving dialysis. His family, two first cousins, began the process of being a donor. The family began raising the funds and had raised the $130,000 required to
Just
receive...
Order, Dr. Prasad. This is an estimates debate on immigration. And the member must tie that back into the estimates, and it's to do with immigration. It's not a debate about a medical condition or what's happened to a person. You must tie it back to immigration. Dr. Rajim Prasad.
Well, there is something happening in the funding of the immigration system, Mr. Chairman, that does not allow it to actually make the kinds of decisions it should be making. And the Minister herself is hiding behind a privacy waiver, because in the particular case, did the Minister receive, where the agency is funded well enough to provide her with the right kind of advice? Because what did happen, what the Minister is hiding behind is this notion that she wrote to me to talking about the funding of this particular case, and that she says, I took the unusual step in this case of writing to Dr. Prasad and saying two things that he was making inaccurate statements. The Minister did not write to me. The Minister cannot produce any evidence. However, the Minister did write to me to say, did send me a letter, a copy of a letter that she had sent to David Cunliffe, in which it says that there was a $36,000 debt that Mr. Sunil Kumar had for the dialysis treatment he was receiving. So I guess the funding of immigration is so bad that health and immigration is so bad that $36,000 is the price of a life for this particular government. The Minister did not write to me about that, and in fact, what I did say in this particular case was about the funding in this particular case, that, well, the case, there was no cost to the immigration system of this particular case, because I knew, Mr. Chairman, that this family had come to a payment agreement with the family to say that they would pay the debt, and that indeed started paying this debt. So the uncle had taken over this debt, New Zealand citizen, and good job, good family, and a good home in West Auckland. And that family would have paid for this particular debt. But indeed, the Minister still made the decision on the basis of that. So that was the first basis for the decision. So the no cost to the state statement was absolutely true in this particular case. Then this particular immigration decision was made based on a report that was received by immigration about dialysis available in Fiji. Well, Mr. Chairman, that report is, Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Ashim Prasad.
that report is also worth considering in its detail, because what is it about the immigration system, what is it about the funding of the immigration system that does not give this minister enough resources to actually work out the risk that is in her own report provided by experts in health to her about an immigration decision she's made? Because the report reads very clearly that about dialysis available in Fiji, Mr. Chairman, because it says that it's about the costing, about the funding of immigration and the decisions about this. Well, I'm trying to bring it within this particular area. I'm certainly suggesting that the funding of immigration is not good, well, it is not good enough, is not adequate to allow this minister to make these decisions, because that particular report made it very clear that this young man risked death if he went to Fiji. 3 months would be funded, then he would find a donor. If he didn't find a donor in 3 months, he would be taken off dialysis, and it says here he would have a few weeks to prepare for his death. This minister did not have the expertise and did not take the time to have a look at the decision, did not analyze the risks, and yet made the decision that this young man had to return. So the decision was made on two bases. One was the amount of resources, the funding this was going to take, that would cost our system too much, and two, that dialysis was available in Fiji. The cost was being met by the family in New Zealand, and that's a fact that signed up to it. And as far as dialysis in Fiji was concerned, there was no analysis of where it was available, how he would get it, and yet it was made. So here this young man went to Fiji, and the last thing he said to me as he was leaving the airport, it's reported on television, that I believe this is the death sentence. This is a 30-year-old man, in all aspects fine, a kidney transplant would have fixed him, he could have returned to Fiji and lived with his family. But this minister made this particular decision for reasons that are unknown. And now the minister hides behind, I don't have a privacy waiver. Well, a privacy waiver is on its way to the minister. It will be available. And I want to see what else will the minister bring out for this particular case. And that's on its way to be released. There is nothing else to be released. This decision was made on the basis of $36,000 debt, which was being paid for, and that there was dialysis available in Fiji, and all the risks were mentioned in the report, but the minister refused to take it, to consider that. So where was the harm? Where would have been the harm to New Zealand if we did allow this young person to stay, if our system was generous enough to stay? There is blood on the hands of those who made this decision, and they ought to actually come out and explain, at least to the family, because so far they've hidden. They've hidden under this notion that we don't have a privacy waiver. Well, a young man need not have died. At least we would have given him a fair crack at it with a kidney transplant in New Zealand. Believing that there was kidney transplant available in Fiji, all Fijians might send him to India, was such a long shot, and the minister knew that. Absolutely long shot. Even the report produced by Health was a report based on a paper somebody gave at a conference. They didn't even speak to anybody about what it was available. It was a paper somebody had given at a conference some months ago. There are so many holes in this particular decision made by this minister that the minister ought to be explained. And it is typical of the kind of problems there are in the immigration system today. Because people tell me the system is aimless. The decisions are not being made consistently in the immigration system. Two people applying with exactly the same background, even in the same school, the same kind of job offers, receiving very different decisions. There are many, many cases now of the immigration system being so culturally idiotic that they will go and do interviews of families, partners trying to companies. This is New Zealanders going overseas, marrying, coming back, and their partners applying. And such a monocultural approach being taken to assess them that they are best being denied the access to New Zealand. And it's being made by people who are now driven within the immigration system on the basis of numbers, the numbers of decisions they have to make. This system is broke, Mr. Chairman. This system needs fixing, and this minister ought to take responsibility for this case and for the system, and indeed try to redress many of the problems that are there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Michael Woodhouse.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Prasad commenced